name is Gloria and welcome back to another video. I'm going to be filming on my iPhone today. It's quite a rainy, miserable December day and the lighting is really dark in my house and my actual camera doesn't really pick up the light very well, but iPhones do a really good job of picking up window light. And today's video, if you can tell by the title, is going to be all about board games. I mentioned in my 2020 favorites video that this year my husband and I really got into two-player board games due to the pandemic, and we love playing them and we needed more to play. So I'll touch on a few that I mentioned in that video, but I'm going to just show my overall board game and card game collection that we have. It's definitely not extensive. I wish we had way more, and we might be getting some for Christmas, and I'll mention at the end the top ones that are on our wish list. So these are the ones that we have on display, that I have on display on my bookshelf. These are some favorites that we play very often, so they're all here. And then these are the other ones. Like I said, not very many. So this is the first category of games that I'm going to talk about. These are mostly games that can be played from 2 to 4 players, although Bonanza here is the outlier that can be played up to 7. These are definitely some of our favorites. I think all of these are on like our favorites shelf down here, but I'll just quickly run through them. Bonanza, I mentioned in my previous favorites video. This is a 2 to 7 player game. The goal of the game is to collect certain cards that are beans, and you collect a certain amount, and then you can harvest and you get coins for them, and the person with the most coins at the end of the game is the winner. There's some trading involved. It's a really fun game. Highly recommend. This is definitely one of our favorites. Then we have Splendor. This is a recent one that we learned about this year. There's this awesome game store in Portland called Guardian Games. Before the pandemic, you were able to go in and they have an entire wall of pretty much every single board game imaginable, and you could just play it. Sit at one of their gameplay tables and just play till your heart's content. And they have amazing customer service. Every single time that we're in there, they have the most helpful employees. One of them directed us towards this game, and we are so thankful because this game is so much fun. The way this game works is that jewels are the currency, and you can collect a certain amount of jewels, up to 10, and then you buy cards with those jewels, and then once you buy the card, it goes towards your jewel count. And eventually you collect more cards, your jewel count goes up, and you can eventually then buy the higher ranking cards with more points, the first to 15, or if it's a tie, whoever has more than 15 wins the game. It's a little bit more focused on like the individual game. I would say it's sort of a similar gameplay to Ticket to Ride, if you're familiar with that one, which I'll talk about in a bit. Up next, we have Pandemic, and no, this is not about COVID, although it's very on topic. This is a collaborative game, so everyone is on the same team, playing against the board, playing against time, really. And different players have different special abilities that help you cure diseases and solve this world issue. The gameplay works that there are certain infected cities based on cards that you flip over, and these cities keep infecting other cities. Your goal as a player is to go and take away these infected cubes from these cities and eventually cure the disease. And once you cure all 4 diseases, then you win the game. And you're racing kind of against the clock, and there are certain things that happen that can cause catastrophe and spread this disease much more quickly. This is a really fun game, but I feel like you have to play it with the right people. Lexi. My cat is just freaking out today. It's like she knows I'm filming. The one big downfall of this game is that if you are playing with someone who's more of like a leader and kind of dominant in gameplay and wants to always make the choices, they will probably like lead the game and everyone else will just kind of step in and follow. That's happened a few times, that if there's one person who really like is on top of knowing what they want to do, then everyone else just kind of follows, because it's a collaborative game and you all make decisions together. Fun fact, or not so fun fact, is that we've played this game several times now since COVID has started, and we have yet to win it. So every single time we've played with friends, we have lost every time to the game. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not. I feel like we haven't played it in a while though, and we need to again to see if we can win, because maybe now there's a vaccine and then it's going to be ending here soon. We'll see. But yeah, haven't been able to win this game since COVID, so I feel like that's, you know. Next up we have, ooh, that's loud, Rummikub, or Rummikub. This is a classic game and it's been around forever. I actually only play the fast version of this game, not the slow version where you take turns, but it's all kind of like all in and it's very fast paced. But basically all the tiles are different numbers and colors are flipped over. You have a certain amount to begin with and you have to play or use all your tiles, and the first one to do that wins the game. But you can only place tiles if you have 3 or more of a different color, or you have the same color, which is a run, like 1 through 5 or whatever. That's kind of the vibe of this game, and it's really fun, and I recommend the fast version. Up next, I already talked about this in my previous video, so I'll just talk about it really quickly, but this is Azul. You have your own little game board, and you collect certain amounts of tile pieces and place them on your board, and they go into certain slots. Based on how you place your tiles, you get more and more points, and the person with the most points wins the game. This game is really fun to play. It's really beautifully made and designed, and I don't know, I just enjoy playing this game all the time, whether I'm winning or not. And finally, in this category, we have Ticket to Ride. This is like one of the most popular games ever, so I'm sure that you've heard about it. This is the United States version, but there is the Europe version. Now they have like pretty much every country. I think they have like Asia, Netherlands, and Germany, and India and France. Anyways, you get certain cards at the beginning of the game that tell you what routes you're trying to complete, and you collect certain colored cards that you can then use as currency to pay for placing down your train pieces, and you're trying to connect your route, and there could be drama in the game because someone could block your route and all that kind of stuff. It is probably a little bit more like soul focused. I'm focusing on my own gameplay and my own strategy to get my train pieces. So I would say it's not particularly collaborative or social. You're sort of just kind of in the zone, focusing on your own thing. I actually totally forgot to mention this game in the 2 to 4 player category. This game looks really fun, and the premise of it is very interesting. It's very Clue-esque. We've tried to play this now several times and have just not had a lot of luck with really enjoying this game or like understanding it fully. It can be played with up to 8 players. Maybe it would be better with more people. We've tried playing it with 2, we've tried playing it with 4, and have just not really been successful in enjoying this game. We literally never choose to play it, and just, I don't know. So if you're out there and you love this game, let me know. Maybe I'm missing something. My next category of games is party games. These are usually best played with more people. Most of these I think can be played with up to 8 to 10 people. So that's the categories. Like if you have more people, if you're having a party, then these are the ones. So I'll start with the most popular one, Codenames. I mean, this game is everywhere and it's won a ton of awards for being like such a great game. In this game, you have 2 teams, and from each team during each round, there's one code giver, and then the rest of the players are supposed to be like secret agents who are trying to pick up clues from the code giver. But the code giver is the only person that knows the layout of the board, and then there are cards with words on them, and the code giver has a secret layout that he knows which words are his and which ones are the other team's. And so they are trying to connect at least 2 or more words during their round to try to get their team to guess which words are theirs. I feel like that was an absolutely terrible explanation of this game, but this game is super fun. It involves a lot of thinking. It's very social. It's very fun to figure out, okay, what is this person trying to connect? And the code giver really isn't supposed to socialize with the rest of his teams. There's a lot of arguing going on and trying to figure out what words the code giver's trying to make you guess and all that kind of stuff. So it's very fun. Highly recommend. Up next, I'll talk about Taboo. This is a really fun icebreaker party game. I think you can play with like an unlimited amount of people. You also split up into 2 different teams. There are cards with a certain main word that you need to try to get your team to guess, and then there's a bunch of words that you're not allowed to say. For example, if your word is armor that you're trying to get your team to guess, you cannot say the words knight, metal, protection, suit, or wear when describing that. So you have to be smart and clever and kind of really focused to make sure that you are not accidentally slipping up and saying words that you shouldn't be saying. And there's like a buzzer and a timer. Very fun, fantastic party game, and this is like available in all stores. Along the same vein, we have Catchphrase. This is probably a pretty old one. I don't know if I see this around a lot anymore, but it's very similar to Taboo, where you have 2 teams and you are describing words to your team. Unlike Taboo, there isn't like words you're not allowed to say, but usually there's more than just one word here. This is usually a phrase. You describe that word and you pass it to the next person once you're done describing, and it keeps passing. And if it ends on you and you don't get your word, then you lose a point or the other team gets a point. So it's sort of like Taboo, but hot potato as well, because you're like passing this around and you don't want to be the last one with it. Next, I will talk about this game, Cards Against Humanity. This is a very popular game. I actually hate this game. I've played it like once or twice, but I find it very inappropriate. I just really don't like crude humor. I don't like sexual humor, and that's what this whole game is about. It's extremely like inappropriate, rude, not politically correct, is very like cringy humor, and I get that that's the point of the game. I have never been like drawn to pull this game out. No one has usually picked it when we have like game nights and whatnot, so I feel like I kind of want to get rid of this game because it's just not, we're literally never going to play it. Next, we have Sushi Go Party. This is basically kind of like an expansion of the Sushi Go deck, which is a smaller card game. And then this is an expansion that has a bunch of other cards in it. This one's very fun. We love this game. This is a great party game. It's also really easy to teach. It's pretty simple. It's a pass and play game. With this one, you choose certain cards that are in your deck. So there's a ton of different variations of how to play this game. But you start out with a number of cards based on the amount of people who are playing, and then each kind of round you take a card, you put it face down, you pass the deck, then you flip it, and you're all kind of going for different things, different sushi rolls and different appetizers and stuff that have certain amount of points attached to them, and the person with the most points wins the game. The cards are really cute, the game is cute, this is just a lot of fun. Next, I have two games that are sort of like Mafia-esque. They're best played in the largest group of people. Bang can be played with up to 8 players, and Secret Hitler can be played with up to 10. So these are both games where each player is given a secret role and no one knows who each person's role is. And there are good people and bad people. So in this one, there's the sheriff and the deputy sheriff versus the outlaws. And in Secret Hitler, it's the fascists versus the liberals, I believe. And in Bang, this one is a lot more card heavy. So you have certain cards in your hands that let you perform certain actions. Kind of the whole goal is you're shooting your enemy. So there's Bang cards and you have to like shoot the people who are next to you if they're not on your team. For Secret Hitler, I would say this game is a lot more social. It's a lot more talkative. It's probably a lot more like Mafia where you have to talk it out between each other. In Bang, there's not a lot of talking. You're not really voting for anything. In this one, you are voting to kill someone each round. So this one's a lot more social and a lot more like devious. I've played this game a few times with friends and they were such incredible liars that I was like, I don't even know how I can trust you anymore after playing this game. But yeah, both of these are really fun. I would just say the more people, the better, and also the right people. So you have to play with people who are quite social, probably more extroverted. Not that you can't play with introverted people or that you can't play with people who are quiet, but I feel like it's probably a little bit more fun to play with people who have better poker faces or who can lie a little bit because it makes the game more interesting. But they're both super fun if you have the right crowd. And my next category of games is 2-player games. I'll start with Caper. There's another really fun game shop in Portland called Cloud City Games, and they do this really fun thing where you can pay $5 and rent a game for like 3 to 5 days. So this was one that we saw on their 2-player area and we got it and we borrowed it. It took me and my husband a while to figure it out. I would say the rules are pretty complicated because there's different scenarios and a bunch of different cards that mean different things. But since playing this game, enjoying it, and then wanting to buy it, it was discontinued, sold out everywhere, and no one was selling it. The game maker, I believe, stopped printing the game too. So we weren't able to find it anywhere, but we still enjoyed it from that one time playing it. So we reached out to the store to see if we can buy this used version. This is the one that they had for rent. And they were like, sure, go ahead and buy it. So we bought this one. We've played it several times since. I will say that this game has the makings of being an incredible game, but I understand where it falls short. There's definitely some like plot holes in the game where the rules aren't explicitly describing what needs to happen in that scenario. So my husband and I have encountered several times in this game where we don't really know what to do or who gets the points because the rules don't really describe. So I feel like this is the first version of this game. Maybe they're reworking it and coming out with a second edition or better version of this game. But this is super fun and like witty, and I think it's like beautifully designed. The whole point of the game is that you are hiring different thieves with different abilities and they have different gear that gives them more points, and you're trying to steal certain goods. And this is primarily a pass and play card game. You just have to be really specific about where you place your cards. Overall, this is a really fun game. I just don't think that you can find this anywhere because we couldn't find this anywhere. anywhere. Up next, we have Jopord. This is a card game where you collect certain goods and then you decide whether you want to exchange those goods for tokens. The earlier you exchange your goods, the more likely you are to get more points off the beginning, but the more you save up, you can get more points that way as well. So it's quite strategic in that way of trying to figure out what you want to do with your cards and at what time. This game's really fun. I think it's beautifully made. I will say one kind of downfall is that it's pretty repetitive. There's just only kind of one certain thing that happens all the time, and so there's less that you can do. My husband and I have found that we can be kind of bored of it sometimes, but overall it's a very solid 2-player game. Next we have Patchwork. I mentioned this in my favorite 2020 videos as well. The way this game works is that you have your own little board and your opponent has their own little board, and you're trying to fill up this quilt. It's a grid board, and there are certain patchwork pieces that you use to fill up your board, but they're all in these like funky Tetris-like shapes, and really the goal is to fill up as much of the board as possible. It's quite short and straightforward, and I really enjoy this game. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it's a really solid 2-player game as well. And finally, in the 2-player category, we have Morels. I also mentioned this game in the 2020 favorites video. This is a new favorite of mine. We only learned about this a couple months ago. The premise of the game is that you're walking through the woods and you're collecting mushrooms, and you have to collect certain kinds of mushrooms and a certain amount of them in order to cook them, and then when you cook them, those points get applied to your end score. So you want to make sure that you're cooking enough mushrooms and that you're collecting them. There's a lot of other cards that can affect or change your gameplay, but I think that this game is really beautiful. It's a lot of fun, and I'm really into it. And I think I'm so into it that I bought the expansion version. So this is Morels Foray, and this expands the game to a 4-player game. And there's a ton of other cards in here. I realized that I jumped the gun on this. I bought this because I was so excited about this game that I was like, oh yeah, an expansion pack and more cards. But this is a little intimidating. There's a lot of stuff in here trying to read the rules that I didn't really understand, so I think I just need to watch a YouTube video about it. But yeah, this just expands this game. So I'm excited to try this one. I'll try to go through these categories quickly. So I'm calling this kind of like classic and card games. Phase 10, very classic card game. I will say we rarely play this anymore just because there's ways that this game has a lot of faults, and games like 5 Crowns, which is very similar to this, are probably a lot better. So I rarely pull this out on game nights, kind of just keep this around for when my nieces and nephews are over. If we have any kids over, then they're more likely to gravitate towards this game than a more complicated one. Next, I have Scrabble Slam. I have actually never played this game. I think I just bought this at Target like 10 years ago and have just never played it before. I'm assuming this is just a very short, quick version of Scrabble. Don't know why I bought this because I hate Scrabble, so I don't know why I would want to play this game ever. So this might be going on our get rid of category because I don't want to just keep games that literally no one will ever play. Next I have Flux. I had never heard about this game before, but I went on a camping trip a while ago and someone brought it and we played it and I really enjoyed it. Overall, I really enjoy this game and I think it's fun. I don't think I'd play it all the time or want to play it over and over and over again. And I also feel like you have to play it with the right people because I can totally understand how this game can be very overwhelming and annoying to a lot of people because the essence of this game is that the rules are changing all the time. The whole point of the game is that pretty much every single time your turn is over, the rules get changed by the next player. Overall, I really enjoy this game, but I have gotten annoyed a few times because it could drag on and it just doesn't end, or the rules change last minute right before someone was about to win. So sometimes you're kind of like, I just want this game to be over. I just want this round to end already. It's a good card game. I'll definitely keep it around. I feel like it's fun to play on occasion, but it's not like a super duper favorite. The next card game is one that we got last year, and this is one my husband and I play quite a bit. It's a very simple game, and you can actually play it by yourself too, kind of like solitaire. You just play against the game itself. But the premise is that there are 2 decks that are going from 1 to 100, so the cards are going in ascending order, and there's 2 decks that are going from 100 down to 1 in descending order. And the goal is to try to use the whole deck, is to get rid of all of your cards. And when you're playing with an opponent, you are not allowed to talk to each other. You're not allowed to share what cards you have. It's quite ambiguous of how you can communicate to one another, but you basically have to try to communicate of, hey, I'm gonna place my card here on this deck or on this deck, and you're trying to get rid of your cards, but sometimes you can ruin the deck because if it was at, let's say, like 50 in going in ascending order, and you need to jump to 70. It sucks for your opponent who maybe had a card in the 60s and they can't play that card now because you ruined that ascending order deck. It's quite enjoyable. It's quite straightforward and simple. I really like it. It's an easy game to play. And then I'll mention Mancala and Dominoes because we have these games. We never play these games. I recently learned how to play Mexican Train, but that's a special kind of domino game. I don't think you can play that with regular dominoes. I actually really like Mancala, but again, don't know when I would ever play this. This is not like a go-to for us. I mean, we have these. They're classic games. We just never play them. I forgot to mention Monopoly Deal in the card game category, but yeah, it's in this like bag that we have. This is a game that I actually really enjoy playing, and it's really fun with like younger kids as well, and I would much prefer to play this over playing actual Monopoly. In this game, you are collecting money, you are collecting properties, and you are trading properties, and there's cards that let you steal properties from other people or steal other cards from other people. And yeah, this is a very fun card game. And the last category of games I have is kid games. That's what I'm calling kid games. But I also realized that this could be in the party game category. But this is a good kid game. 5-second rule. It's a good, like, again, icebreaker game. There are cards in here that all start with name 3, blah, blah, blah. So it could be like name 3 kitchen items, name 3 sports teams, name 3 cars, etc., etc. You have to be able to name 3 of the things in 5 seconds, and then you pass it along and everyone gets a turn. It's a really good game to play with kids, although I do realize it's now age 10 and up, so not little kids, I guess. Next, this is a game that my husband bought. I don't know why, but he had this game and now we have it. It's called Watch Your Mouth, which is the game where you put those like plastic things in your mouth and it makes you look weird and sound weird and like dribble spit. Basically, you put those in and then you have to try to say the words and your opponent has to get what you're saying. But because that thing is in your mouth, you sound weird and so they have no idea what you're saying and it's all funny and you're laughing and spit's just flying everywhere. I played this with my nieces and nephews and they loved it because they think it's hilarious. But I mean, it's kind of gross at the same time. Like, I don't enjoy this game because it's just like too nasty going on. I don't know. It's too much saliva happening. It's a good kid game to have, I guess, if you're into that. Next, we have classic Apples to Apples. This is not the kid version. There is an Apples to Apples Junior, which I will say is probably a little bit better to play with kids because they don't have like people that they've never heard of before. We don't play this very often just because we used to play it back in the day when it came out, but not so much anymore. And then I realized that maybe this should have been in like the Dominoes Mancala category, but I played this when I was a kid, so that's why I put it in this category, but it's called Mastermind. This is a classic game of logic and deduction, and I would say that that's pretty accurate. Based on this image here, you pick a certain order of colors, and then you keep that closed, and your opponent takes turns guessing what your order of those colors might be, and you give your opponent clues of saying like, you got the color right but the placement wrong, or the placement right and the color wrong, or you didn't get any of it right. And basically you win the game if they're not able to guess your sequence of color pegs in whatever that is, like 10 rounds, or they win if they're able to guess it. I actually really like this game. I just never get to play it, so that's kind of sad, but it's a really fun one. So those are all the games that we own, and I just wanted to mention a few games that are on our Christmas list. One of them is definitely Sequence. I love playing Sequence, and we don't physically own that game, and it's on our Christmas list, so hopefully we get it. Another one that I recently played that I actually enjoyed, which I was surprised with because I hate Scrabble, as I mentioned, but I really enjoyed Bananagrams, which is kind of like a quick version of Scrabble, but your like Scrabble board is you're building it yourself. You don't have to play off of other people's words. Another game that I absolutely love is Carcassonne. Really want to own that one because I really enjoy playing that with people. I mentioned Mexican Train. I feel like that's a really fun bigger group game that I would love to own. We don't own Uno, which I feel like we should because I love a game of Uno and I'm sad that we don't own a deck. And then you might have noticed that we don't have Catan or Catan. I don't know how you say it. I know it's like a controversy if you say it the wrong way, but we don't have that game. Even though I've enjoyed playing it the few times I have, I feel like in our friend group, we have too competitive of friends to really play that game. So I don't think that we would ever gravitate towards playing that game. And it just takes a really long time. And you know, if we ever feel like playing it, we can borrow it, but I don't think we need to own it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I know this was super random. It's about about board games. Hopefully you learned about some games you haven't heard of before, and maybe now you're intrigued with buying, and I recommend you support your local game store, because Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and like Target and stuff will survive, but those local game shops who have literally the best customer service and like really cool people, I recommend buying from them. And if you have any game recommendations, comment down below, because I will always take any recommendations for board games. But yeah, those are all the board games that we own or want to own. Our board game collection is ever growing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!